Latrell's massive, mate, for anyone playing against South on the run home. And then if you draw them in the semi-final on a dry Saturday afternoon, Latrell can cut anyone to pieces. I don't care how good the defence is. So, and if they don't finish, that grand final qualifier as an absolute minimum, then it's another failure once again.
Mate, I'd hate to be a Sharks fan because they must just be so disappointed. I mean, some of those things are out of their control with injuries and so on, but they've just hit a wall, and we thought they'd time their run to perfection, but not sure that's the case. Well, Steve, could be big news. Is Latrell back? It looks like Turbo is as well. Not sure that's going to make too much of a difference. What else have we got today, mate?
Mate, we talk about teams fighting for the 8 and the top 4 and what's going to be more important for a few of those teams. And we talk about the lock of the week. And believe it or not, we discuss if the Sharks are going to get a home semi after we got some advice from their fans a few weeks back. Can't wait.
Yeah. Oh, mate, they're going to start winning or they will miss out on the home final altogether, and the problem with Shark Park will become null and void. Love it. You'll take no satisfaction in that at all, will you, mate?
No, it'll be glorious.
All right, let's get into it. So we don't know 100%, but if Latrell Mitchell is back for the Bunnies, that just changes everything for them, doesn't it?
100% it does, mate. It is a massive inclusion. He's been named in jumper 22. They've played a little bit of Ducks and Drakes, although in typical Bennett fashion, he's been dry about it. He said at a press conference this morning that if he gets through the last couple of rounds, that the last couple of training sessions, that he'll find his way into the team, more than likely off the bench by the looks of it. But if not, definitely next week against the Titans. So this would be huge, Hawk. I genuinely look. I can't see them knocking over the top 3 teams come those big games, but I can certainly see with a fully fit Latrell and a few of those other players that have stepped up and played more of those first grade games now, that have got a little bit more experience under their belt. The Tallis Duncans of the world, for Feeder coming off a huge performance last week against Kickow, that they can make a little bit of a run and they can find themselves certainly in week 2 and maybe at a stretch even week 3 of the semis. So this inclusion or potential inclusion for the Rabbitohs is monumental, mate.
Yeah, 100%. And the beauty of the 6-man bench is they can sit him on there, and if it looks like they're going to get well beaten, well, then they just put him on ice. Yep. But if they're in the game, like he won't be at full fitness, but he just has that ability to come on and change games. I don't know if you remember early on in the season, there was a game where he had like a 10, 15-minute patch where he just went berserk, put off 2 big hits that resulted in turnovers. He set up 2 tries, scored one himself, and he just has that ability. So it won't even matter that maybe aerobically he's not going to be fully up to it, because they can just bring him on to play a role, bust the game wide open, and he's just that sort of player. I still don't get the hate around him. I guess it's because he's outspoken. Plenty of people will say that it's race related, and then they may well be right in some cases for the people putting shit on him. But in terms of, I guess the other thing is his level of consistency. He's probably not consistently a level of that we know he's capable of, but when he is on and at his best, he is unstoppable. Remember poor old Will Chambers in Origin in I think it was around 2018, 2019, and he just could not stop him, and it was literally just get the ball out wide and just too big, too strong.
Yeah, 100%, mate. The impact he can have is huge. I guess the knock on him and it probably doesn't get articulated very well by a lot of fans, to me it's the effort from him. It appears sometimes that he's not interested and he's not putting the effort in, similar to a David Fafita that we spoke about earlier. Now, I'm sure that's not the case, right? To play in the NRL, you need to be giving it everything you got at every minute. But that it just appears, everything just comes so naturally and easily for Latrell that, at times it can look like he's drifting in and out of games and he's not switched on. And the fan doesn't like that. The fan likes to see those effort-based players constantly. So, look, hopefully he comes back and has a real big impact for South. They've got a huge fan base, and they've been bubbling away, mate. They haven't reached the heights of the top 3 sides, but with all the injury concerns they've had, they've always been either in or very bloody close to the top 8 the whole way. And they come up against a Warriors side who have been red hot, but who have done a lot of travelling. They're in Sydney against the Bulldogs, up to the Gold Coast for the Titans. back home from monster clash against Penrith, up to Suncorp last weekend, and then down to Sydney again. So it has been a monumental block after that origin period. So I'm not saying that at any stretch that I think the Rabbitohs can get them. I think the Warriors will win comfortably. However, if Latrell is out there and the Warriors are just a little bit off after what's been a monumental stretch last month of rugby league, you never know. You never know with Latrell, mate.
100%, mate. And I think that's the thing, is that he can produce the unpredictable. He's just one of those players. You don't know what you're going to get, but if he is on, then look out. You raise a good point about the Wars. They've had a tough run, but there was something that Sean Johnson said that I heard him say this week, and he talked about the connection of the team, and he's played in that Warriors team for a long time, and he said, I've never seen, that's their secret weapon, they've never been more connected, and that could be partly to do with the time they spent together in Australia during the lockdowns, but also I think we can't underestimate what Andrew Webster's done there. They talked about when he first went over there, he just tried to immerse himself in the culture as much as possible to find out everything he could, not just about the players and their families, but of the history of the Warriors and who they were, what they stood for, their DNA, and he went to great lengths to make that really clear. He got past players in. He's got Stacey Jones there, absolute club legend up in the box with him as well. And he's also come from a club, the Panthers, who have done that better than every other team. Yes, they've got incredible ability, but there's something about what Cleary's been able to do there to bring these teams together, particularly when they're having high turnover of staff, and Webster seems to have learnt the exact same ability, and they do look like it. Even Metcalf comes in for one game the other week, and when he scored the try, just that all the players just look so excited for him. And this is a player that's barely played. He's also leaving at the end of the year, but every single player got around him, and you can tell a connected team when the teammates are more excited for what someone's achieved than the person themselves.
Yeah, spot on, mate. That was very, very evident during the time, and the coaching staff, the front office, the whole lot of the Warriors have just really doing a good job at the moment, mate. They're very impressive. So, look, really big clash. Obviously, we'll talk about it later in the show because the implications on the final is huge. But Latrell's massive, mate. For anyone playing against South on the run home, and then if you draw them in the semi-final. On a dry Saturday afternoon, Latrell can cut anyone to pieces. I don't care how good the defence is. So really interesting to see if he gets a start. But if not, Rabbitohs fans are only going to have to wait that extra week to see him carve apart the Titans.
Absolutely. Now, this is an interesting one. Turbo's back, and you might wonder, well, is it worth it, given probably not a chance of making the 8, but he's just a sort of player that just, like, he bleeds for the Seagulls. It's been well publicised just how much the club means to him, and not just the first grade squad, but just the whole community and everything he does in that space. And he's so well respected, and he would just do anything for this club. And obviously that's where it's at, because he's like, okay, we've lost a few in a row. It's more than a few. It's up to half a dozen now. And he's just like, get me back in here. But is it the right call, mate?
Well, you're 100%. That's the reason why, mate. There's no doubt. Knowing what we know about the Trbojevics, their heart and soul's Manly, and they'll do anything they can. It was only 18 months ago that he offered to take a pay cut because of all the injuries that he'd been having. Anything that needs to happen at Manly, one of the Trbojevics put their hand up, and they have been absolute club legends. I've never heard a bad word about them in any forum. And, there's been a number of opportunities they've had to, head to other teams, and they've always continued to put their hand up for Manly. And this is another example. To your point, they can't even mathematical. There need to be a brain surgeon to figure out how they're going to make the 8, even if results went their way. So this is purely and utterly for the Manly jersey. I guess, in a long shot, there could be a Kangaroos World Cup spot for him if everything went smooth. But for me, as far as the injury in the future goes, what's the right answer here, mate? Every time he plays, we get a glimpse of what could have been one of the all-time great careers that have just been hampered by injuries. He's had, what are we up to? 7, 8, 9 hamstring injuries now in the course of his career, among other issues he's had. Unfortunately, his body's just failed him for everything he's achieved, which has been one hell of a career, right? He's played for his country. He's played Origin and dominated at the highest level. He's won man of the match performances at that level and played some outstanding football for his club side. So for me, he go and play, right? You go and play for your club. You go and play for the fans. The poor old Manly fans have been through a roller coaster season. It will give them great joy on the weekend to go out and watch Tom play, mate. So good on him for getting. I hope, and we've said this earlier in the season as well. Unfortunately, we just hope he gets through, mate. It'd be 3 more games for the end of the season, and he would love nothing more than to give the Manly fans a win before the end of the season.
They do seem to be on a bit of a hiding to nothing, though, heading up the M1 to Newcastle, home game, Sunday afternoon, in the sun, dry track. Mate, you'd expect them to be cut to ribbons.
You would, mate. They lose. Yeah. The Knights lose Gagai this week, but welcome back Bradman Best and also Jacob Saifidi, who's had some time out. So with the exception of Gagai and obviously Brown, they're just
they lose Manu Leilua, who's the young fella that's been.
They have to. He will be a big out, mate. He has been extremely impressive these last few months. So Jermaine McEwen comes into the side for him. Who's had some decent performances as well. So look, don't get me wrong, Manly will be doing everything they can like they do every week. But right now the Knights are riding high, and that back line that they have, even without Gagai and Brown, is still bloody impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, though, if you look at the Seagulls pack, it's just missing names, and we talked about that at the start of the year. It's one of the reasons why you had them for the spoon, in case the Manly fans had forgotten, is that you talked about the depth in the forward pack and Paseka not being there, and they got a few other injuries, and they just look pretty thin on the ground in terms of who they've got. I mean, some of those bench guys on the NRL app don't even have photos, and that probably says everything, right? Like they weren't expected even to be in and around the first grade squad. So, but in saying all that, we know the impact that Turbo can have. We just talked about Latrell. Turbo's very much the same, if not more consistently have that ability to change a game. You only got to think back a couple of years ago when he won the Dally M and he didn't even play the whole season.
Yep.
So as you said, he's going to get out there, and why not? Like, what's the worst that could happen? Do the hammy again? Well, he knows how to rehab from that. And I noticed actually the Dogs they're talking about sending Mitch Woods to specialists in the US to get his hamstring issues sorted.
Yep.
We saw Trbojevic do that a few years ago, and it seemed to work to a point, but it hasn't really stemmed the tide. And I'd be more inclined to send them to something more mental or emotional to sort that out, which I've talked about before, because there's got to be more to it for these people that have repeat injuries.
You do. Well, as you mentioned before the show, mate, St George have taken a different approach with Gutherson. So, it'd be interesting to see what the listeners have to say. So certainly throw in your comments about whether you think, having the rest in the last 3 weeks off for Gutherson Potentially, there's a little bit more behind that with the Dragons. Wouldn't mind probably offloading him, but that versus Turbo coming back and having a go for the last 3 weeks. Whether which would you prefer if you're a Manly fan? It's an interesting debate, mate. Either way, it lobs. He's going to play, which is good for rugby league. Just hope with everything I've got that he gets through unscathed for these 3 weeks.
Just an interesting thought there. Yeah, you mentioned Gutho. It does seem bizarre that they would just say, "Oh, we'll save him for next year," given that the rumor was he got the tap on the shoulder saying that they'd given him permission to go. Is it time for a full circle moment for Gutho and Manly give him a run? It's where he started. He started his career there with injury-plagued seasons before he went to Para, and we all know the career he had there. Maybe it's time for help some of those young blokes through. It'd be a nice little story, but I'm not sure where the future is for Gutho if it is true that the Dragons are going to let him go. Okay, let's get to the games this weekend and look at who's got more to lose. Is it the teams fighting just to get in the 8 or the teams fighting for the top 4? Yep. It's getting pretty tight up there, as you mentioned in the preview.
Yep.
If the Sharks don't win this weekend, then they're every chance of sliding as low as 7th and missing out in that home semi. But what do you think, mate? Where is the most important games this weekend?
Yeah, look, it is a monster thing. Obviously, history will tell you, so it's not a big prediction. But no one's going to come from outside the top. Probably 3, but the top 4 and win it this year. I think there is certainly a gap, and it's starting to widen. It'll be interesting to see the Panthers this week after 2 really tough weeks. Right? They weren't embarrassed. They've obviously lost Yo, but they've just gone to play the Warriors and play the Roosters. So it'll be really interesting to see how they come out of that. But if you want to win the comp, you absolutely have to finish in that top 4, and it's just about done. The top 3. Are a lock for mine, and the Dolphins with the draw they've got should hold on to that 4 spot. They've got their destiny in their own hands. To your point around the Sharks, Trindle out. Obviously, they come up against the Titans, Parramatta, and the Storm. Now, the Storm haven't been pushovers. They haven't been winning, but they've been putting up an effort. Titans and Para have been up and down. If you get them on a bad week and the Sharks don't turn up, mate, they're equal with the Knights, obviously, only on for and against, and South are screaming down the neck. Now, we've just spoken about Latrell. I do think the Warriors will account for them. However, on the back of what the Warriors have been through, and Latrell does get out there and does some work some magic, you never know. And then the Cowboys have got a very easy draw. Now, they are the epitome of rocks or diamonds. So it's a really interesting one for the Sharks. As far as what's important, I think that comes down to what every team's fighting for. Like right now, you're the Cowboys. All they want to do is make the semis, right? Poor old Peyton's been absolutely battered and bruised for the last couple of seasons in the media. He just needs to make the top 8 just to give his fans, something to celebrate. They're only 1 game away from absolutely locking it in, guaranteed. So that's what they're fighting for. But obviously teams like the Roosters, Panthers, Warriors, and even the Sharks, they're pushing for that fall. Like for me, if the Sharks don't finish in the top 4 and make that 2nd to 3rd week of the semi-finals, I consider it a failure. We heard on Monday night show from Will around the stats about their squad. The club can't have done any more for this club for them to succeed this season. And if they don't finish, that grand final qualifier as an absolute minimum, then it's another failure once again. And then we're starting to ask, well, obviously there's a decent turnover of players coming, but what are we actually looking at for what the club's trying to achieve? And if it's to win comps, then they need to have a bit of a look at themselves. So some interesting games coming up this week, but there's a few teams that are just hoping just to scrape into the 8, mate, like the Cows especially. The Bulldogs, from where they come from, they would class making the 8 as a success after what happened to them early parts of the season. But it's all to play for in these next couple of weeks.
It is, mate. For mine, the Sharks are gone. And it could be the end of if it even was a premiership window. It could be the end, given the amount of players that are moving on next year. We got Katoa and Ramian going to the Cowboys, Talakai and Prue to the Bears. Is there one more going as well? Is Cam McInnes signed anywhere for next year?
He potentially could be going to England. I think I'll get Stan corrected
the
by
Sharks.
that
The Sharks fans will let us know. But there's a few others that aren't re-signed. And if you mentioned some of those teams they've got, both those teams, Para and Storm, that they haven't played well, but they've been in games. And if either of those two teams actually hang on to the ball and get a run of possession, then they're going to have to chase points, the Sharks. And even just looking at we're a week and a half away, and it's they're only $1.48 to $2.66 favourites in that Parry game. So obviously they see something there, and we may as well do our upset of the week now. The Titans, it's very similar odds for this weekend. And if the Titans, again, can complete high, they've been real trouble for teams. And given Sharks' confidence is way down, mate, that is a massive chance. And like I said, I think they're gone, the Sharks. And to me, upset of the round, the Titans to knock them over.
Big call, mate, and I'm sure all the fans out in the Shire will be giving you feedback right about now, like I copped it a couple of weeks ago from the Sharks. Look, I can see the Sharks winning all three of those games, but I could also see them dropping any or all of them as well. They're just against those oppositions. The Titans up here haven't been hitting their straps by any stage, but if you look across the 17 they're putting on the park, it's actually not too bad a football side. So while I think, Adam Fennell-Blake's back for the Sharks, I've probably got them slightly ahead. An upset here and the Titans winning without Trindle will not be a shock for me. I certainly think the Titans have got another win in them this season. And, the Sharks the last couple of weeks have been far from impressive. We spoke about them a few weeks ago about them being a lock for the top four and really being spoken about in the same breath as the top three. And then 3-2 in the last 5 weeks, and it hasn't been impressive football either. So it'll be very interesting to see what the Sharks dish up against the Titans. But I'm expecting a pretty dry, fast track. We've had fairly good weather up here north of the border, mate. So the Titans get a fair share of ball in the run. Don't be surprised if you're 100% right, mate. We get an upset there.
Yeah, I was off them all year because they were inconsistent, and then they fooled me, and I was on board, and I'm like, okay, well, they're a genuine chance, and mate, I'd hate to be a Sharks fan because they must just be so disappointed. I mean, some of those things out of their control with injuries and so on, but they've just hit a wall, and we thought they'd timed their run to perfection, but not sure that's the case. Hey, you mentioned before about the run of some of those teams, and one of the things we've talked about a lot all year is teams that have played the Warriors and the Panthers, what happens to them in the following week. Well, after the Warriors played Penrith, it obviously didn't impact them because they absolutely gave it to the Bronx. Yep. But do we look at that and go, okay, maybe the Panthers were a bit flat playing the Roosters, given that they'd come off a pretty brutal, it was brutal. Like the Warriors bashed him in that first half. 100%. Maybe there was something to that. What it does show is that you want to win that first game if you finish in the top four, because to have to back up and get one of those teams that's won week one from the bottom four who's up and about, it's going to be
no question, mate. We've spoken about it for the last month or two. So the Panthers going over there, playing the Warriors, then coming back here, that travel alone is huge. But then it was a super physical game. And then we saw another really physical game. The Panthers fans gave us a little bit on social media about the Roosters being offside. Well, listen, guys, this is the NRL. This is the business end of the season. Everyone's going to be offside. Figure out a way to win. Is the bottom line, right? So the two physical games in a row, and there was a little bit of talk on another podcast that the Panthers after Origin have had a little bit of a bulk training where they've done a little bit more of a heavier load just now, and they'll start to freshen up. So they went from Mudgee into Auckland, back to Sydney. They've got to go down to Melbourne this week. So there has been a little bit of travel. Obviously, some monster games, heavier training load if the reports are true. So there's a bit going on for Penrith. So don't put a line through them. I think it's there's still plenty there for them. But as far as what you're saying on the semi-final game, I can see teams from the top 4 losing 2 weeks in a row. So someone's going to have to go over to Auckland with the assumption that they stay in second spot, mate, or if they can get into second spot with the for and against. Yep. If they can stay there, if someone's going to have to go over to Auckland to play, or someone's going to come off a loss against the Roosters or the Panthers or the Warriors, and they're going to get bundled out again because trying to lick your wounds, especially if they come up against the Dolphins or a Knights who play this fast up-tempo game, I could see a team getting bundled out the back door, mate. So making sure you finish top 2, especially the Warriors, it's going to be so important for them. And then winning that first game's everything. Have a week off, rest up, and you don't have to back up against one of those brutal teams.
Yeah, I think it was Luke Keary was talking about it this week, and he was just saying just how him and Jimmy Graham just talking about how important it is to get that week off, and they were almost suggesting like you need to win. He said, when was the last team that lost that first week and won? I think they said it was 2021 when Panthers got beaten and then came back to beat the Bunnies in the grand final. But apart from that, it's pretty much the teams that win that first week in the those qualifying finals that get the job done. So, massive game.
It's certainly an interesting one with the Panthers and the Warriors, with the assumption they both continue to win and they both finish on 42 competition points. It'll be down to for and against, and at the moment there's only 10 points that separate them on the for and against ladder. So literally every try and every kick a goal could be so important in the way this semi-final series progresses, and then ultimately who wins the competition. So don't expect them to take the foot off the pedal if they've got a team at their mercy, because for and against is going to be vital for those two teams.
Yep. I think you're right about the Cows. I think they'll just creep in because they've got the bye, and then really they're more chance of losing to the bye than they are to the West Tigers, given how they're playing at the moment. Now Adam Dewey's out for the season. Actually, I read today that he could be out for as much as 6 months, so eating well into their pre-season. So they are already up against it for next year.
Yep.
I messaged, I did a welfare check on one of my mates. He said, Tigers, I've got nothing left. Worst team to support. I blame my dad. I hope so. Well, his dad played for West, like back in the day, to be fair. I hope something big changes. New owners or NRL license taken off them. I have no love left. I have no love left for league. Wow.
On the back of Albany Creek Kennedy last week with the Brisbane Post, very similar. Now a Tigers fan. It seems plenty of teams have put their fans through the ringer this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's always the same. I was actually thinking the other day about who will be the first coaches sacked next year, because it always happens. People say it won't, but there's always a couple.
100%. But you're talking not to get bogged down in the preseason with so much to go. But West Tigers have lost Jerome Luluai for next season. Dewey's going to miss the preseason. So they're the two, star playmakers as the team looks right now today. So, shit, mate, you got to start to feel sorry for them sooner or later, don't you?
Oh, mate, we have been all year. I just can't see a way out, unfortunately. Oh, dear. All right, shall we get to our tips for this weekend? There's not much to go off this weekend. We're just talking about we're 3 weeks out from the semis, and this round, it just looks like an absolute pile of crap. Can we see?
Yeah, it does,
like I know we said the Titans is an upset, but if we look through all the other games, it's like you can't even see a game where it's going to be a contest.
No, it's weird. And even game of the round, I lobbed on the first one just because I don't think the Storm or want to give an inch, but they're obviously not going to be up to it. And Penrith are coming off those last 3 or 4 weeks. But I looked through the rest of the round, and I just couldn't find anything else that really got me excited as far as an absolute spectacle. I think as we go through them, each game, there's a couple there that have got importance for the semi-finals, but I think there could be a couple of big scorelines here, mate. So as far as me, if you really need me to go with one, I'm going to go with the Panthers to beat the Storm for the game of the round. I think that'll, down at Amy Park, Jerome Hughes has just been given life membership at the Storm. That was a big deal, along with Tui Kamikamica. So they won't want to give the reigning, or not the reigning premiers, but the team who's been so dominant over the last 3 or 4 years, they won't want to give them an inch, mate. So while I don't think they'll have the class, I think Storm will put up a fight, and I think it'll be a really good contest, mate, to watch. So that's my game of the round, mate, and I think the Panthers, after coming off that tough week, I think you'll start to see the Panthers just sharpen up a little bit, mate, on the run home.
Absolutely. Just while we're on the Storm, they've bought Kelma Tuolangi for next year. He's a sort of player that they could turn into something really
That's
good.
A good pickup.
He's para fans. We always joke about how he's got feet for hands because he's always got errors, penalties, but when he's on, he produces some pretty good stuff. And if they can get him playing consistently, it's a good pickup for him for next year. And they need that depth in the forwards for sure after what's unfolded for them recently. Yeah. The lock of the week's just a no-brainer. We're talking about the absolute form team in the comp against the Roosters against the team that is travelling worse than anyone, worse than the team. The two teams coming last and second last, and that's saying a lot given one of those teams is the Broncos, who are just battered and in more and more turmoil by the week.
It is, mate. You don't want to keep piling on the Tigers, mate, for the fans, unfortunately. But reality is you could go down the local pub, pick 12 blokes out of there and knock them over on the weekend.
None of the Tigers fans are going to be watching league podcasts at this time of year.
Yeah, you're probably right. But yeah, mate, the 13 blokes out of the pub, it'd knock them over at the moment, mate. There's just a disconnect there, and unfortunately for the fans, it just doesn't look good, mate. And right now, the Roosters playing some bloody good football. Tedesco's fresh. When has Tedesco been fresh this time of year? Especially after going through an Origin campaign that was obviously one of the fastest and most brutal we've seen. So for him to have had the time off will be a blessing in disguise, mate. It really will. And the team's coming together. We saw a few, Hugo Savala as an example in the centres. He just keeps getting better and better and better each week. Sam Walker's negotiations for his contract seems to be taking him to a completely different level. We questioned how he'd come out of Origin. First time, still a young bloke, still not physically mature, and he's just absolutely dominated. So their forward pack looks like they're fit and healthy and running. We spoke for Keddy and Wong quite intensely before the Bulldogs game. They keep going well. And then that bench, so Connor Watson, Lindsay Collins, and the Butcher brothers, give me a spell. You would genuinely be hard-pressed to find a better bench. All four of them would start in the Tigers pack. I think we can all agree on that, right?
Yeah. So and that prop rotation, Lenu, White, and Collins, that's just about the best three punch lineup in the whole league. That's and you mentioned Teddy. He would have been fresher last year because he didn't have Origin. Well, he had was it last year? No, I don't think he played at all last year. But they weren't going that well at the back end of last year, and they kind of limped in, and they had a bit of a late challenge. But as you just said, their forward pack is dominant. They've got Walker, who's gone to a whole other level after Origin. They've got DCE. Their young backs are another season in. Mate. suddenly, and I did notice that the Roosters fans had changed their tune, because on a few weeks back we were talking about how their fans were giving it to their own team, but now they're all on board and they're coming out of the woodwork to talk about peaking at the right time, and they absolutely are. So look out. Game with the biggest impact on the finals, definitely the Bunnies and the Warriors.
Huge, mate. Huge.
Yeah. Go.
Look, obviously this is one that'll have an impact on the top 4 and the top 8. So the Warriors, we spoke about, every try and every point is going to be so vitally important for them. With the assumption Penrith's going to win out, they need to obviously score more points than the Panthers. And then the Rabbitohs have got it all to play for. They're right there in 7th spot. This win will get them 13 wins, which will earn them a top 8 spot, mate. So it's going to be very, very challenging. I've got the Warriors winning. But as I said, the Warriors have been through a very grinding last month of football. They would have circled that at the start of the year, and they've come out on top. They've been super impressive, right there with the Roosters, the form team post-Origin, and they're playing some bloody good football, mate. So I've got the Warriors winning. A Rabbitohs win would surprise, but not greatly, especially if Latrell gets out there and does his thing. But this has huge impact, mate. If the Rabbitohs can get a win, they lock in their top 8 chances, and then potentially push for that home semi-final in round 1 if they can get into 5th or 6th. And then the same as the Warriors, mate. I can't. I've been talking about it for the last 2 months. I can't stress enough how important it is for the Warriors to finish in the top 2. I think it just absolutely guarantees them a grand final place come October.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned before, if they're winning and they're winning well, they'll be chasing points. So it could have an adverse effect on South's chances with falling as well.
Yeah, this is the last time they leave New Zealand, potentially till grand final day. Right, that's how big a deal the end of the season is. The last 2 home games are in Auckland, followed by what unfolds during semi-final time. And if they finish second and win that first week, then this will be the last time they have to leave their home before grand final night, which could be, again, it's monumental, mate. So I'm looking for the Warriors, who have got plenty to play for, just to get over South. But big game either way, mate.
Absolutely. And before we finish up, we need to pay tribute to Big Papa, Josh Papali'i. They've renamed GIO Stadium Papa's House for their final home game of the year, his final game for the Raiders. I heard people talking about him. He started as a hard-running back rower, and then he morphed into this absolute beast of a prop forward that dominated in the Origin arena, and even had a cheeky comeback last year to help them win the series. What a legacy he will leave at the Raiders, and he's going to leave a pretty big hole, maybe bigger than they realise at this point.
Yeah, I definitely think that is the case, mate. I think he's just been someone that they've just relied on. He's a Logan Brothers junior, a club that I coached at for a couple of seasons, where Cam Smith's from, and he's just been an absolute cornerstone of the Raiders pack, of the Maroons pack for that matter, for a number of years, mate. He's had one hell of a career playing the toughest position there is in the game. And he's done it always with a smile on his face, a cheeky grin, and he's got the job done, mate. So, look, it's going to be a huge clash for him, and one that they're going to be in up to their eyeballs with the Broncos. You've got to have the Raiders as favourite with the way the Broncos have been playing. So, hopefully for the Raiders fans and for Big Papa, he can get the win on the last day and do a lap of honour at Canberra Stadium, mate. It'd be very fitting for him.
Absolutely. That'd be where the comparisons between you and Cameron Smith would end, by the way, coaching it.
Yes, mate. I wouldn't mind half of his career, Cameron Smith, or half of his bank account either.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I mentioned this on Monday, but did you see Madge in the press conference when they asked him about Reece Walsh's injury? And he was staring into space, and it was like he was just in shock. Because it just washed over him, and then he kind of went, "Oh, sorry, mate, what was that?" Like he just looks dejected, And yeah, like I said, he looked like he was in shock. Interesting, Marty Tapau's interview coming out. Code Sports are doing a series called Sacked. Interesting, telling their stories, and he was saying that, describing the meeting after he liked that post that was Isaiah Taylor putting shit on Madge's coaching, and just how Madge dealt with it, wouldn't shake his hand afterwards and wouldn't let him go say goodbye to his teammates and that sort of stuff. And it's like, yeah, wow. So if that's true, like, it's, it shows the level of intensity that he has. And, yes, interesting. Very interesting.
It is, mate. Yeah, he certainly looks like right now he's overanalyzing everything to the nth degree, and he's just worn out. Is the bottom line, mate. The pressure, the intensity, the media, and then he would feel it even, magnified because that's all his life is, right? So it is the May to power thing. Look, I haven't seen the full interview, and I highly doubt we'll get Madge's side of the story or Madge commenting on it. But, I think it'll be pretty explosive with looking at all the details. But, look, whatever happens with the Broncos, mate, I'm going to put it out there in a far too early prediction. I think they're going to struggle again next year. I don't think it'll be this bad unless Walsh gets a serious injury. But you talk about Canberra with Big Papa next year. Haas going from the Broncos, bugger me, if that isn't a monster hole that you could plug with two players and it wouldn't be enough. So I think they're going to be up against it next year, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's adding to the weight on his mind at the moment.
Yep. I could definitely see him being the first coach sacked next year, given we've already talked about they're going to have a real lack of depth in the halves. They've got some forwards finishing up as well. Corey Jensen retirement. Yes, they got Mitch Barnett going there, but yeah, it could be a long old year for the Bronx fans. And amazing. You mentioned that comment from the foundation fan from the Bronx on the Monday episode. And he just talked about young players, not even want to play for them. Like, if that's really true, then that's staggering, because they've always been able to regenerate. Like, you look, the Anthony Seibold finale went out with the wooden spoon, and there was that sort of talk there. It took them 3 years, so it's pretty good recovery. But then next year was like, I think we talked about it the other day, where they finished 14th and then maybe 10th.
Yeah.
Before they had that run to the grand final. But, mate, it looks like a long road back.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, mate. And I think it's going to be a long road back in almost every facet of the club. You know, the front office isn't operating as well as it should be. There seems to be leaked stories happening. Things don't seem to be getting handled as well as it should. Then there's some player agent issues that are getting leaked out and getting told behind closed doors. And then the recruitment, to your point, when have the Broncos gone into the season with a set of halves like they're going to have next year? There's a number of things, mate. This isn't just let's get back to basics on the field. There's a number of things, and I think you might have made it as a bit of a left-handed comment last week, mate. Maybe the people who are conducting the reviews for the Broncos are the ones that need to go first, and then have a look at the whole organisation, mate. But look, they're a monster club. They're the biggest club in rugby league and potentially Australia. I don't know how the AFL go, but the Broncos are a massive brand, regardless of what the Dolphins continue to grow and encroach in their space. So someone needs to grab them by the scruff of the neck and get them back online, mate, because it's too important to the game to have them coming 16th on the back of a grand final win last year and losing their best player and one of the best players in the whole competition without even a shot fired, mate. He signed with South and the Broncos never really stood a chance, mate. So not good signs for them, but I'm sure it'll give us plenty to talk about in the off-season.
It will. Just one last thing on the Bronx. I saw a short article today suggesting that either Ezra Mam or Michael Maguire would be gone next year because they can't both survive, and South's potentially needing a 5'8", watching this space closely, and that would not surprise at all if he ended up at the Bunnies. So interesting times, and if they do part ways with Maguire some point next year, and they've lost all those players, very similar to what happened with Seabold, you can't see the same road back as what happened. So I can't say I feel for the Broncos fans because they've had, like we talked about Monday, they've had a long era of dominance. But I certainly know their pain all too well, as you do. Okay, well, we managed to stretch that out. I don't know if we can squeeze any more out of that episode, given we haven't really got much for this weekend's games. But yeah, as always, thank you so much. We've got now seem to have got a real core audience that are showing up every week, and we appreciate it. And yeah, looking forward to sharing the run into the finals and passing on our. What do we call it? Our alternative to the mainstream dribble that you see. Even the Fox Sports website is just articles that have been pulled from 360 or something else, and it's like they fool me with headlines again. I don't know even why you go on that website.
The hook, mate. They track you.
Mate.
Very good, Hog. I look forward to enjoy the weekend of footy, and thanks for following and subscribing.
Well said, mate. See you, boys and girls.